Welcome back to The World Over. President Donald Trump reasserted American sovereignty in his first speech before the United Nations General Assembly this week. Meanwhile, here in Washington, two Republican senators have renewed efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare. Here to discuss all of that and more is physician and member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Now, the GOP has until September 30th to pass a new version of this repeal bill. They tried this before. This one's known as the Graham-Cassidy bill. You have said that this bill does not get rid of Obamacare, but immortalizes it. How so?
You know, as a physician, nobody probably has seen Obamacare closer or more up close than I have, and I think Obamacare doesn't work for the country. And I promised the voters, both in 2010 and again when I ran last year, that I'd vote to repeal it. I just think the Graham-Cassidy bill keeps it. It basically keeps well over 90% of the spending, 90% of the taxes, and then it redistributes the spending. So to me, I want to repeal Obamacare. I don't just want to spend the money in different states. That's kind of what they do. They take the money from Democrat states and then they want to spend it in Republican states. That to me just isn't repeal.
But Senator, you have been all for a clean repeal of Obamacare. That seems unlikely to garner passage in either house. So my question is, if this bill at least removes the individual mandate and the employer mandate, isn't that a step in the right direction? Shouldn't that be enough to win your support?
Well, if you had a bill that did just that, and we did have one, I would support it. I supported repealing the individual mandate, repealing the employer mandate, and repealing the devices tax. I've reported all of those variations. I've supported all variations of bills like that. But this bill has $1 trillion in Obamacare spending that it keeps, and then it divvies it up among the states. But see, when most of us said we wanted to repeal Obamacare, we meant it. We didn't really want to say, oh, well, if we can't repeal it, and if the other guys, the other men and women won't obey their campaign promise, and they're going to go ahead and change their mind and vote to keep it, now you should go ahead and change your mind and not vote to repeal the whole thing. No, let's repeal the whole thing. Senator, but I will tell you that there's dual paths going on here. I'm still working with the president on expanding what are called health associations, where you can buy insurance across state lines through a group and get more and get less expensive insurance. This is going to happen in the next week or two by executive action by the president. And I think we should let that take place because, one, it doesn't cost anything, and two, let's see how well it works over the next several months. Then let's revisit this issue. The September 30th deadline is an artificial one. There's no reason why we can't keep revisiting this issue.
But that doesn't, even cross-state purchasing of insurance, that's not going to ensure pre-existing conditions, will it?
Actually, it does, because what happens in health associations is you get group insurance. The real problem under Obamacare is that premiums have doubled in the individual market, and the individual market has what's called adverse selection. It's getting sicker and sicker, and the healthy people aren't buying into it. So my plan would let people leave the individual market and get group insurance. When you get group insurance, all group insurance in the United States has a protection for pre-existing conditions. And interestingly, the group insurance under the national model is the only segment of the insurance industry where premiums have not been rising dramatically. It's the best place to be. So what I'm trying to do, and I think it's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, is we're going to legalize the ability of every plumber, fast food worker, carpenter, welder to actually join a group and get group insurance like people do in big corporations. This is enormous, and it doesn't cost anything. So I really think we ought to give this a chance to work before we leap into something that I think is somewhat half-baked, $1 trillion spending proposal that really has been through no committee process or really not fully vetted.
Senator, you need to get yourself booked on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. He would like this. He's been ranting and raving about pre-existing conditions. This is your moment.
Yeah.
The White House supports this bill, however, this Graham-Cassidy bill, and the president tweeted this out Wednesday morning. Rand Paul is a friend of mine, but he's such a negative force when it comes to fixing health care. Graham-Cassidy bill is great, ends Obamacare. Your reaction to that?
Well, we just have a difference of opinion. I am on friendly terms with the president. Like I say, I continue to work with him on this cross-state health association plan, which is really going to happen really in the next week or two, I'm hopeful. But on this particular issue, I disagree with him. I think Graham Cassidy actually keeps Obamacare. And if you look at it, it keeps over 90% of the spending. It keeps over 90% of the taxes. And the main thing Graham Cassidy does is it reshuffles the deck, takes money from the big states, California, New York,
right,
and then it reshuffles it and sends it to the rural states, which happen to be more Republican. And I think in the end, it also leaves a lot of power in the HHS secretary that as soon as we get a new president, we may find that the new president, if they're a Democrat, says, why don't I reshuffle the deck again and take the money from the Republican states and give it to the Democrat states? We could go back and forth forever on this. To me, it's really petty and it's partisan sort of push to take money from Democrat states. This should be about fixing health care for all the states, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat.
Now, Lindsey Graham is making the pitch for these block grants that would be taken from the federal government and given to the states to disperse as they see fit. Listen to this. I want your reaction.
In 1996, we block granted money for welfare reform, and it worked like a charm. We put governors in charge of the program. We held them accountable. So here's the choice for America: socialism or federalism.
So is that the choice? Socialism or federalism? Single payer or Graham Cassidy?
Well, this would not be the first time that Senator Graham is confused about the Constitution. The 10th Amendment is the amendment people refer to with federalism. It says that those powers not granted to the federal government are left to the states and the people respectively. Federalism would be we get rid of Obamacare and then we let every state tax people and spend on health care if they want to. What Graham is doing is he's acknowledging he was okay with the Obamacare taxes, and he's just going to take them from the people, bring them to Washington, swirl them around the bureaucracy, and then he's going to give them back to the states. That's not federalism. Federalism is leaving the powers not granted to the federal government in the states, and the states would address the health care issue, but they would have to vote on both the taxes and the spending. The problem with doing it up here and having the money come from Washington is we have a printing press. We also have a $700 billion deficit this year and a $20 trillion overall debt. So the problem is we don't have any money up here. It's easy to say Uncle Sam will pay for it, and then the governors get to pay for it. Even Republican governors are succumbing to this. Like, who wouldn't want all this money and we get all the power to decide how to spend it? But they don't quite understand that we don't have any money to give them. We're $700 billion in the hole this year.
And that doesn't count all the natural disasters that continue to pile up. Puerto Rico, Houston, all of Florida. That's going to be in the tens of billions of dollars. Before I leave this topic, does Graham Cassidy pass?
Maybe hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah. Do you, in your estimation, does Graham Cassidy
does it pass? No, I think at this point it's not going to, and I also think there may never be a vote on it because my understanding is leadership will vote on it if they have 50 people saying they'll vote for it, but I don't think they have 50. There's a lot of misgivings, and a lot of people are saying, gosh, CBO hadn't even scored it. We're asked to go ahead and vote for a $1 trillion spending plan that CBO hasn't even scored yet. And so this is a rush job on a very complicated issue. And I think we ought to be a little bit more deliberate on this. And if you want to put forward a repeal bill, and actually I will, if Graham Cassidy gets a vote, I will insist on a vote on a repeal as well. And under the budget rules, I should get that vote.
This week, President Trump addressed the UN at the 72nd UN General Assembly. And he made it clear the U.S. is prepared to attack North Korea if necessary. Watch.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
What do you make of the president's rhetoric there? Is that effective, in your opinion?
I think it's very important that there is a message to North Korea that says that a military option for them has no possible outcome that would be desirable, but also for us as well, that there is no real military solution to this. Were we to attack North Korea preemptively, I think millions of people could possibly die in South Korea. For North Korea to attack us preemptively, I think that millions of people could die in North Korea. So I don't think there is a good military option. And what I would try to send a message to North Korea is, one, we don't want regime change. We're not going to invade. We're not going to occupy. What we want is you to stand down and not continue to rattle, the nuclear saber and indicate that you're willing to use it. There is no good result from nuclear war. Fortunately, over the last 70 years, we haven't had it. But it was everyone that had nuclear weapons coming to the understanding that there was no good outcome from using nuclear weapons. We came to that realization in the Cold War. That's the most important thing that could come of this, is that North Korea decides, you know what, really, are we pushing the envelope here? Is there a chance that we precipitate nuclear war? And I think knowing that there's no good options is an important message for them to get.
Senator Paul, your overall estimation of the president's speech, there were some in the EU, a lot of Europeans, I spoke to a few of them, who said, they were very disgruntled by this speech. They thought it missed the point, that it was America sort of saber rattling, and they were waiting for American leadership. You must have heard some things here that you liked. I mean, he laid down the cause for national sovereignty and other nations doing their part. And I'm sure a lot of voters, among voters, that resonated positively.
One of the things that has annoyed conservatives for years about the UN is that we pay 25% of the dues and we don't get 25% of the votes. And we also pay basically the way for countries who want to use it as a forum to bash America and everything we stand for. So while I'm all for diplomacy, I'm all for having an international body to discuss ways to avoid war, I'm with many conservatives in being annoyed by the fact that we pay most of the money to run the organization and people use it as a forum to bash us.
Senator Rand Paul, we thank you for being here, and we'll catch up with you soon.